So we're staying with technology, but we're doing a shift into a different aspect of social progress now, looking at access to information and communications. Now, this is a slightly paradoxical area. It's a really critical area of people's quality of life, we think, is this having the ability to engage with the world, get information, get facts, but get entertainment, get connected to other people. It's one where we've actually seen a huge progress through technology with access to mobile phones, access to the internet, but also one where there are lots of gaps there and lots of people being held back. So it's really pleased today we got from Facebook, someone who's leading this work on connecting more people in the world, is joining us now on stage, is Carolina Rossini. Carolina, welcome.
How are you? Very good, thank you. Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us here today, and I thank you very much, Michael and Sophie and Sloan, for the invitation to be here. My name is Carolina Rossini. I work for Facebook for the Global Connectivity team. Let's see this here. Okay, good. So Facebook is a partnership-based company, and our core mission now, and it's a very sincere mission, is to give people the power to share and make it open and connected, bring internet access to the remaining 60% of the world that are not yet connected. Sorry, it's not projecting there. We are having some connectivity problems here. Okay, good, thank you. So just one step back. Facebook, nowadays, we have actually two pieces inside that are very focused in connectivity. The company per se, with its services, Messenger, WhatsApp, the platform, but also, and inside the company, we have something that is called Connectivity Lab, and I'm gonna talk about this because it's extremely fun and sci-fi, in a sense, and internet.org, which is something that we have in a strategy for 10, 20 years in terms of return on the investments we are making there. It's connecting folks around the planet. And why we think it's important to connect? Oh, yeah.
Carolina gets her microphone fixed. I want to show, could we get that slide up that I had showing access to information and communications and GDP per capita, just to go back. So this is one, so access to information and communications, very strongly correlated with GDP. And that kind of makes sense because you've got countries that can quite quickly, as they grow economically, businesses come in, mobile phone masts get built, internet connectivity happens. And so we can see, say, a country like Myanmar, which has very quickly been filled with mobile phone masts, has seen huge jumps in scores on things like access to information and communications. So that's one aspect of this story. But another aspect of this story is there's two other things I want to highlight. One is this including everyone? There's still quite a way to go. We're going to hear more from Carolina on that front. Then the second issue is going to be around quality. What are people getting through that new connectivity? And that's why what's going to be happening later on the next panel is talking about some of these questions. What's the quality of people are getting? What's the quality of our media being an essential part of access to information and communications? So it's not just having the access to information, it's also what's the quality of the information that people have access to is a key way of thinking about this component in social progress. So this is two parts. Carolina.
I'm back.
Welcome back. Thank you. Carolina, please. Bravo.
Okay, and one thing that I really wanted to mention that really always amazed me is that per day, over 1 billion people access Facebook or one of our platforms, like I was saying, WhatsApp, Messenger, et cetera, and over 1,000 hours are watched in Facebook videos. And I always say, I hope it's not just cats, because those are so too many hours to spend watching cats. And that's why I think this is a very important piece here, because this is what gives the justification that really supports our mission for connectivity. And so every piece of connectivity enables more job creation, more learning tools, and I worked with open educational resources for over 10 years, and this is so important. Save lives, decreasing mortality rate, and why? Of course, it's not something that's causal, it's correlated, because people access more knowledge and understand better how something goes, for example, a pregnancy progression and so on. And you have this increase on local growth with every 10% of mobile penetration. So this is huge, right? But unfortunately, even if we live in the same world, 4 billion people are still not connected properly. And when I say properly, it's because 80% of people around the world have some form of connectivity or are close to some form of signal. Generally, that signal is 2G, which doesn't give you much. So we need to bring a better experience. And that's why we launched recently with The Economist the Inclusiveness Index, which is also about not just the connectivity, but the quality of the connectivity and the quality of the programs that come with it. But there are a series of barriers there that are very important and sometimes not so obvious, right? The affordability is an obvious piece. The price of devices and the price of connectivity and data are still very expensive for large parts of that 4 billion people around the world. The phones prices are going down. But they are still expensive. Some of the cheaper phones in India are around $50, and that still is very expensive. And the data plans are equivalent to 15 to 25% of your income, so that's very prohibitive to a lot of people. So that's a basic one. Awareness and viability. Awareness is the one that always surprised me. Because even not being a millennial, I grew up, I had access to computers very early. And for me, the value of the internet was obvious as soon as I connected. But for a lot of people, when they enter the internet they see is not in their language, do not have their content, don't have any identity or links with what they expect and what they know around themselves, right? So the lack of local content is a huge barrier around the awareness. And of course, availability. A lot of times, there is no return on investment for telcos to invest in spreading the network to some areas, like rural areas, for example. And we are actually partnered with telcos, and I'm gonna talk about that, to deal with that problem. So we have a couple of connectivity initiatives spread through the company, the Connectivity Lab, the Free Basics, which is our plan through mobile phones, and all the infrastructure project that I'm gonna mention working with the telcos. So Free Basics, we wanna provide people with free access to locally relevant basic services through our app or through the browser. And it's just to introduce people to the benefits of internet. It's our on-ramp service. Here is really interesting because the majority of content here is actually built with local partners. So we offer to all the mobiles of a certain country. There is no exclusivity, it's all transparent. And we say, what is the content that your population or your community wants? And that content in generally are the basic ones like government information, education, finance, microfinance is growing there, communication, health, and women development. I'm very I'm always very inspired when I see the partnerships we have in Africa around women development and empowerment and health. Because, you know, I don't know if you guys seen the OECD report that says that if you actually give a mobile phone to a woman and you give her the resources, the whole community have economic development faster than if just the men have the tools for something. So the on-ramp is, the idea of the on-ramp is that you don't have any internet connectivity, but then we launch Free Basics. You understand a little bit how things work. You see a little bit of the content that's relevant to you. And then you actually decide, oh, now I may want to buy some data because I realize service A, B, or C, it's relevant to me or to my son or so on. And these are some of the technical issues. As I said, it's non-exclusive, it's open, it's free, and it's transparent. So this is to deal with a lot of regulatory issues in a lot of countries around the world. These are the countries where we launched Free Basics, and in general, they are with 2 or 3 operators in each country. So as I said, it's non-exclusive, and it's being extremely accepted in Africa. And I'm very happy to see that we have tons of stories, but I don't have time to go over them here with them, of people using Free Basics and Messenger and things like that to actually sell their crops or communicate locally, and even develop online stores to sell, like they come in a co-op with the local products and then they sell through those things and they do follow-up. It's really amazing what people are doing with this service, this platform. And at the end of the day, our statistics shows that 50% using Free Basics go up to buy some data because they finally understand what is the value for them. And moving to the infrastructure part of our investments, we see that everybody has a role to play here. All the companies have a role to play here in every layer of the internet and the infrastructure and the telco piece. But our approach is really based on what technology should work better in which reality. So we are not religious about what technology we want to use. We just explore everything that works better and test everything and see what works better in a certain region. So we have terrestrial, I'm pointing, but there is we have terrestrial technologies for high density areas. We have the plane, Aquila. If you fly United, you probably have seen the video hundreds of times. The Aquila drone, the aerial plane that covers 60 miles. And it's really cool because they're going to launch 3 and they're going to rotate. So it's going to be a 60 miles, like almost 180 miles of coverage there based on the rotation and triangulation, and satellites. Our satellites, I don't know if you guys have heard, they launch, there was an explosion, so the satellite that we were trying to put in Africa to cover huge parts of Africa was gone with the spaceship that exploded, I think it was SpaceX. But we are still working on satellites to provide connectivity in Africa in partnerships. So this is Aquila. It's really cool because it's the span wing of a plane. This place here is in UK where our designers work and have tested the Aquila. And it's very light, the batteries, and it works on like 3 or 4 hair dryers powers. And the belly is where the connectivity comes from, and it's through lasers. So it's really cool because engineers in Facebook really solved a lot of connectivity problems and a lot of technology problems, and are testing better communication through lasers and other things that are still not public. I'm going to go a little quickly because of the time. So, and Telegraph. So if you think about the high density areas, so cities in India where which is a high priority area for investment for us. We really want to connect things through a technology that is small, right? You cannot have a plane on a huge tower in the middle of Delhi or something like that. So we are actually building the Terragraph network, and it's really cool because there is a lot of background technology here too, based on mesh, the cells that we use in these towers, and so on. So if you have a electricity tower, you put these 3 cells around, and they actually connect through the city. So you have a wireless point there that connected to our telegraph, that then Terragraph, then connect to another power. And at the end of the day, you increase the availability of wireless, and you increase the velocity and all that here. And that's why in one of the areas of policy, which actually I'm not an engineer, I'm a lawyer, that's why in spectrum, for example, we really want to open shared spectrum. We want better use of spectrum. We want to really promote capacity and coverage of networks. And for that, that's one of our biggest policy positions when we go to the International Telecom Union and to regulators in countries and so on. And this is great, coming from my background as a human rights lawyer and digital activist. And finally, the Telecom Infra project. This is something very interesting because we saw that the telcos did not want or have the capacity to invest in some areas that were not high priority for them for a variety of regions. This is the membership, so as you say, is a really great, high-powered network of members that really believe on this cooperation to make digital inclusion a priority. And let's not forget that inclusion and ICTs are the core base of most of the sustainable development goals here. And I think all these companies have really bought into that idea. So the idea behind that project is to create sustainable rural internet connectivity, partnering with carriers to really build infrastructure and recruit entrepreneurs to sell Wi-Fi. And there is a story that I love, that there is this woman in Africa that has this little shop that she sells cigarettes and things, and think about shop in terms of a house built of wood, right? We are in Africa, it's a very simple place. There is a video about that in our internet.org website. And she actually sells, you can buy internet if you give her a chicken. So the chicken is the coin of exchange in that region. So people are developing amazing, creative, local relevant business models to sell Wi-Fi connectivity. And finally, the Open Compute project, which is also part of that partnership with telcos, where we are trying to use a lot of open hardware and open software methodologies and equipment-based to create data centers that are cheaper and actually really support this whole holistic view of connectivity I was talking about. So this is it. Thank you, and thank you for holding with me while we had our technical problems. Let me know if you have any questions.
Carolina, thank you. Stay here.
Sure.
Now, I know you're very smart people, but just in case anyone hasn't worked it out, that wasn't a technological problem. That was part of the performance. Because you saw as a headset how unjust it is when there's no connectivity.
We are resilient.
So I've got 2 questions for you, and again, you don't have to answer both of them. One is actually on that point, maybe playing to your background as a lawyer, is that why don't we talk more about access to information, access to the internet as a justice issue? If it's an integral part, as we believe, of social progress, if it's got all those massive positive externalities, why is it not an issue of justice? That's question 1. Question 2 on technology is, how soon are we going to get there? We've got all these fantastic things. How soon before we can get everyone connected? And I don't even want to think about how many cats that means.
Sure.
Either one
so
of both.
Why is not a justice? I think it's about narrative and who you're talking to, because I spent 10 years on academia and with digital rights groups, and that narrative is there. But that's not the narrative that gets a lot of regulators and international organizations moving in the right direction in terms of that issue. So while you can build a series of principles and things to judge the actions of all the companies and all the governments developing digital inclusion projects, that at the end of the day will not stick when administrations change, being very, very practical, right? Yeah. But I think we actually won when was proven that the Sustainable Development Goals are dependent on ICTs. So I don't know if you guys have seen that or you're interested, and I'm happy to share that later. The ITU has made a matrix correlating how ICTs support a certain development goal. So education is a great example, and Nathan was wonderful talking about that, and so on. Health is another one, not just about e-health, where you can do surgeries remotely, but also about just receiving information on how your pregnancy is going, because in a lot of places you can actually do not get to the health center because it's too far from your house, and these people are walking, right? So I think that's a little bit, it's a bit about who you are talking to. That's it. And the second question?
How soon till we were all connected?
Well, that's something that I think depends on all of us, right? As I said, we are not religious about technology. We are trying to experiment everything and see what works best, and also in a way that create opportunities and to the local people to develop their own business models and be sustainable. This is one of the biggest challenges for our connectivity initiatives, how it's sustainable over time, and not just private, but also for governments. And I think And it really frightens me that the rate of connectivity is going down. But we already identified the barriers. There is a lot of technology out there. There is a lot of breakthrough going into. I think it's really a matter of commitment and mainly by the private sector, because I'm from Brazil originally, and we have broadband plans and a fund where telcos used to deposit money that would be then invested in digital inclusion, and that has never happened. So I think we really need a series of actors working together to accelerate that process.
Cool. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for your resilience.
Thank you.
Thank you, Carolina.